I'll call a meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Ordinance Committee of the City Council for May 7th, 2024. It is 6:30 p.m. Or thereabouts. I recognize a quorum. We have members, Councilor Jack Lally from Ward 6 to my left, Councilor at-Large David Texera, Councilor to my left, Councilor Thompson to my right from Ward 5. All of you have agendas. And we have a couple of people who have a tight schedule tonight, including the mayor who is here. So I would entertain a motion to take item number 7 out of order.
Mr. Chairman, motion to take item number 7 out of order.
Second.
All right, motion properly made and seconded to take item 7 out of order. All those in favor? All those opposed? Madam Clerk, would you read item 7?
Item 7, ordinance. An ordinance amending Chapter 8, Section 8-9 of the revised ordinances of the City of Brockton to increase the trash collection fee from $280 per annum to $400 per annum with quarterly billing. Invited to attend, Shirley Azak, Ward 7 Councilor, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Robert Sullivan, Mayor, Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, thank you very much for taking me out of order. I have a school committee member meeting tonight as well.
Mayor, do you want to go to the microphone?
Need the mic.
Just, we don't want to miss anything, so.
Is this on TV?
Yeah.
Oh, it's different than when I was here. Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. First of all, I want to thank you for taking me out of order. I do have a school committee meeting tonight at the Unknown School, so I truly appreciate your professional courtesy. Relative to the agenda item before you, as an elected official, you know, we all have a fiduciary duty for the well-being of the municipality that we serve. We also understand that, you know, Brockton historically is not a wealthy community in terms of the people. We're wealthy with the skilled people, but dollar amounts in the bank accounts, we're not wealthy. So when it comes to raising fees or contemplating raising fees, all of us as elected officials take it extremely serious. The matter before you tonight, and I do want to thank the Ward 7 City Councilor Shirley Azak, who supported and sponsored my my submission to you. What's before you tonight is a projected $30 increase per quarter, total of $120 for the year. Now, $120 is a lot of money, but let me just tell you that, number one, we haven't increased the trash refuse fee since the 90s, since the 1990s when the first President Bush was sitting in the White House. But also our contract, and in this case it's with Republic, under the contract terms, we have to pay more money on a regular basis under the contract. I'll also tell you that last week I met with 8 out of the 11 city councilors. I will meet with Councilor at-Large Texera. I know he was out of the country. I will be meeting in the near future with Councilor Minicello and Tavares, and I did it in groups so that we would not violate the open meeting law. But at that time I expressed that since the deficit on the school side came to light, we have been having regular meetings on the school side and city council. The state is watching all these meetings. I want to give a shout out to the Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll, who has been a wonderful partner. But the state has been watching all meetings. Matter of fact, they actually knew that I had filed this order. So we recently had a conversation just a week ago tomorrow, last Wednesday. And we expressed that I have submitted this. I am humbly asking for support. If there is an amendment on the floor or a compromise, I will support that as well. But we also have the CFO here tonight to share with all the councilors that we are projecting a favorable passage of this to get through FY25 budget. We don't want to raise fees, but unfortunately we have to raise fees. We have to. We have to look at all fees. And the one that's before you tonight, again, is one that I don't think will financially cripple people. And I don't say that lightly, but if we do not pass it, we will continue to see hemorrhaging and deficits relative to this matter. So I know the CFO has done some metrics and some hard numbers. I think that would be helpful to you as an ordinance committee as you move forward on this decision. And if nobody objects, if Mr. Clarkson could give those figures, because they're extremely, I think, number one, eye-opening, rewarding. I want to thank Pat Hill, the DPW Commissioner, that has really vetted this out as well. And again, I'm here to answer any questions this evening, Councilors. Thank you very much.
Councilors, before Mr. Clarkson makes a presentation, and I know the mayor has a school committee meeting, any questions for the mayor? Any questions for the mayor at this point, or we can go to Mr. Clarkson? We'll go to Mr. Clarkson.
Thank you very much, councilors. Have a great evening, and I humbly ask that you support this. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Attorney Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, council, how are you? I'll give you a shout out, too. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
For the record, we have Councilor Susan DeCastro from Ward 4 is part of the Ordinance Committee. She is here now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I've just passed out to you is a spreadsheet that was put together by the business manager for the Department of Public Works based on a suggested compromise that was passed along to me. So this demonstrates that with this compromise that I'll mention in a second, the revenue for the enterprise for next year will be increased by approximately $2.1 million. And given the current proposed budget for the refuse enterprise will be in balance and in fact have a very slight surplus. So that compromise that was proposed to me, I believe by Councilor Rodriguez, but I'm not certain, was adjusting and shifting sort of a compromise approach, and that would be limiting the increase to $15 for single-family homes, but implementing the $30 full increase for multifamily homes. And so I believe the thinking on that was that because there are more tenants and people to absorb the full $30, that the multifamily homes could absorb that, and that the burden would be less on our single-family homeowners. And so with that compromise, this scenario would yield about $9.6 million for the enterprise for the year. The current budget that you'll see when the budgets are provided to you in a couple of weeks is $9.4 million. I would like, though, to reiterate something that the mayor said during his introductory remarks, because not only, I think, is this a fee increase that, as challenging as it is long overdue. I think that the consequence of not addressing the fees in some way puts in jeopardy the support and partnership that we have right now with the Commonwealth and our ability to balance the fiscal year 2025 city budget. Because if the enterprises aren't in balance, they require a subsidy from the general fund, and we are just about in balance, but another $1 million or so that we would need, or maybe $2 million to balance the budget if there is no fee increase, puts that in peril. So although this is one enterprise fund of many that we have, and we're talking about $2 million out of a $500 million budget, our attempts to balance this budget really are riding on contributions from a variety of sources. And the mayor's correct. The lieutenant governor herself, I think, expressed that we all need to participate in this solution. So I think what we're asking is not only that you approve this long overdue fee increase, but recognize that in order to get to where we need to get and avoid state intervention, we all have to participate.
Mr. Clarkson, you can blame me for the reduction for single-family homeowners. I have something pending with the clerk, but questions for Mr. Clarkson, councilors? Questions?
Yes.
Councilor DeCastro, then Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Clarkson. I thank you and the mayor for being here. You're sure that with this reduction for single-family residences, which I support wholeheartedly, we will have adequate funds?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And the spreadsheet that's before you, I think, in pretty good detail, I think lays that out. Not a huge cushion, but I think enough to get through this year, take a deep breath, and develop some long-term strategies, as I mentioned last night, across the board.
Okay. And the other thing is, I just reflect, and I think it's fair to say, having not increased this charge in 20 years, I think a number of people were playing politics, not necessarily anyone in this room. And I think it's a terrible shame, because the people who got shortchanged in the long run were the city residents. You know, now we're being forced to make this large increase when there could have been several increases over time, you know, whether reflective of cost of living or anything like that, similar guidelines to increase this. This is just a shame for our residents. And the people who have called me about this, I've said to them, all our other expenses have gone up. Do you think the city's expenses don't go up? And that's inadequate if you're trying to hang on a fixed income. I know that. But I just think it's too bad that we're whacking people like this now.
Indeed. Having been, as you know, a local elected official many years ago myself, it's never easy to implement a fee increase. There's never a good time. However, I would agree with the sentiment expressed by Councilman Castro that for future reference, I think, across the board, smaller, incremental fee increases to keep up with the cost of expenses avoids having to make major increases periodically. And I think that for people that may struggle to pay their bills that are on fixed income, that more predictable, smaller increase can be more manageable.
I think it's just better stewardship of the city and of these enterprise funds.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Clarkson. So, I mean, we do find ourselves in a predicament where, you know, this is, as you stated, it's never a good time to raise fees, especially in these economic times with rising inflation and interest and more and more families living on fixed incomes. I know $15 a quarter, which works to build for a single family, works to $60 a year. You know, doesn't sound like a large increase, but you know, for struggling families, it is. And so, you know, it's unfortunate that we again have allowed ourselves to be put in the situation where we've kicked the can down the road. As you said, was it 20 or 30 years? 30. So, you know, 30 years of kicking the can down the road to, you know, because prior councils did not want to make a tough political decision to then, you know, end up in this situation where essentially if we don't do it, we show bad faith to the state at a time when we're trying to gain their assistance in balancing our budget and addressing our deficit issues. And so we do want to show that we're a good actor and that we will make the tough decisions to keep our financial house in order. Now, I know we talk about how, you know, with this matter coming up at this time, the perception can be we're passing on our deficit spending to the people, right? That we need to find any way to make money so that we can cover our deficit. That's not the case here, but, you know, perception, you know, it can be a perception that we're in a deficit, we're increasing fees. And so I just want to inform the public that regardless of whether we were in a economic, you know, deficit for fiscal year 24 or 25, these fees had to be raised because it's unfair that we would use general funds to supplement our enterprise fund, because number one is then people who aren't using our trash, mostly our businesses and our industries and you know, those taxpayers would be footing the bill for residential refuse use. And that's not proper. That's not the way to run our municipality. But you brought up the issue of smaller increases. Now, I know just a few years when I first got onto the council, we kind of had the same issue with our water rate, the blocks, our rate blocks, where those water fees were not increased for, was it 12 years, I believe, at that time, and put us in a similar situation. I believe at that time, and if memory serves, our ordinance allowed for a certain small percentage increase at the discretion of the executive to make those small minor changes when necessary. Number one, is that correct? I believe I thought I read that, but can you confirm whether that is the case or not?
No, I don't believe so, Council.
Oh.
So when we, the last increase, and certainly I'll come up here if you want. The last increase that occurred on the water and sewer, there were some block rate adjustments that were done to minimize the effect on the lower tiered people, the people that don't use a lot of water. And we initiated that $15 service fee, which was both for water and sewer. I don't think we never came across the board and raised it by any rate. So any rate increase requires city council approval.
Okay, so there's no percentage. Maybe I confused that with something else. So whose job is it to tell us? Would that be your job or the CFO's job to tell us, hey guys, we're getting, the current block rates or the current refuse rates are becoming short on what we owe through our contracts? Who informs the city council that those issues are coming out of balance and needs to be addressed?
So it's a discussion that generally I would think starts with myself and the CFO after reviewing the budget, after reviewing our contractual obligations. Certainly in this enterprise, that's the biggest load to carry, right? The contractual obligation to our hauler. And we do a deep dive into the budget. Something that we've done for many, many years is taking the retained earnings from the prior years and use the retained earnings to kind of balance off the budget. That's not how an enterprise fund is supposed to operate. We've done it for many, many years, and we're just to the point now where we can no longer sustain that. So,
okay, so basically, and what should have we been doing with those retained earnings? Is there capital improvements, or essentially that's what we should be doing with that funding, correct?
Retained earnings are, yes, generally set up for capital expenses.
Okay, so we've been basically taking from our capital improvements to supplement our operational costs.
Well, in the refuse, it's a little different than the water and sewer. There's not a whole lot of capital improvements that have to happen. The biggest portion of the budget is with a contracted service. Most of the capital improvements that have to happen with the contractor. That's their obligation as part of the contract. So other than, vehicles, generally speaking, we don't have a whole lot of capital purchases that we make in refuse.
Now, what about the refuse department itself? Do you guys operate through this refuse enterprise fund? So
yes.
Employee costs and all of those, the capital would be the vehicles and employees essentially.
Yep, the employees, the vehicles, the insurance. There are removal items that we have down at the recycling center that we have to pay to get rid of. There's also, other forms of monies that come in through the trash bags and stuff like that we use to kind of offset costs too, which is another reason we've been able to hold on so long with these current rates. Okay,
so if I'm reading this Excel spreadsheet correctly, currently we're getting $7.4 million into our refuse enterprise fund under the current rates. With the new increases, we'd be looking at 9.5 essentially. So when I look down for the 25 fiscal budget, I see 9,431 essentially. Is that our service contract cost, or what's the service costs and what is your operational costs for the department?
So the service cost is, as it says in the sheet, I'm assuming you have the same sheet that I do, is going to be $8.1 million. That's based on a 2% increase.
Okay, I don't believe I have the 8.1.
Yeah.
What am I looking?
It's right here.
Oh, okay, yep, sorry, I see that.
Personal services is obviously my staff. Overtime is the overtime that my staff uses. And the goods and supplies are stuff that we purchase throughout the year. Recycling barrels, recycling supplies, trash bags, gloves, the whole 9 yards.
With a small amount of retained earnings, about $152,000.
That's with the amended proposed increase, yes.
Okay. All right, I would just, if you could run through this sheet for me. So I see current charge, the $70, and there's, that's 1,600, or 16,961. That's bins, right? So that's the single-family households.
Correct.
All right, then we move down the 140 for the 21-23. Who is that?
One is a two-family, so somebody that has 2 refuse charges.
And then going down to 3-family, 4-family, 5, and then 6, essentially?
Correct.
Okay. So currently, if you had a multifamily, you were paying 70 for each floor.
Yes.
And now we're adding 30 to each floor.
For the 2 families and above, yes, with the amendment.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I understand, we're in a spot where if we don't do this, then we're essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that's just not the way we should be operating our enterprise fund in our municipality. From hearing from the mayor, these conversations are being had with the state. They expect us to maintain a orderly fiscal house if they're going to help us manage some of these deficit problems. And this is an effort to keep our fiscal house in order. And so I know it's tough, but it's one that needs to happen. So I appreciate your time, Mr. Commissioner, and yours as well, Mr. CFO. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Thompson, just as an FYI, shortly, when the amendment is introduced for everyone's consideration, it does allow or authorize the mayor and the DPW commissioner to increase rates each July 1st by not more than 4% to keep up with the issue that you just raised, that we don't sit back and don't raise rates. The professional people who look at it every day, the mayor, whoever he or she may be, and the CFO and the DPW commissioner would be able to adjust those rates. So that'll be coming in shortly.
Okay. Do we do that with any other enterprise fund? Do we do that with any other collected fee?
No.
Not in any of the water, sewer, or stormwater, I can tell you that.
Not yet, anyway.
No.
Now, Councilor Lally and then Councilor Texera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before I go into my own thing, I want to take, up from where Councilor Thompson was going, and we've got a lot of bills that weren't touched for a long time, for whatever reason, a lot of them political, deferring and then saying, look, we deferred. If there were, smaller or more routine adjustments, the position that, this council keeps finding itself in, wouldn't have occurred. So just, and this might be a silly question, so on the current charge list that the councilor just went through, 70s single family, 140s, 2-family, 210 is triple decker. That's not, those are like 3 separate bills, right? They're getting 3 barrels, trash barrels, and they're getting recycling barrels as well, right?
It's 3 separate services, yes. It would all go on the same bill. It goes to the owner of the home.
Yeah, okay. But it's still 3 separate. So yeah, my concern is, we want obviously the vast majority single family, and we want to be reflective of that. but also if it's, if there's 3 apartments, they all have 3 services, there's one bill going to the owner, but that comes out of the tenants in some way or the other.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. So that was what I wanted to try and figure out, just to see about, I wanted to sort of chew on that myself. Maybe there might be a way to bridge the gap a little, because they are, in a roundabout way, still going to get the full 30. So that's just something, Mr. Chairman, that I didn't know if you'd, I just figured I'd throw it onto the table as a thought, is these folks are going to wind up getting the full 30. I don't want to go any further up on the singles, but I don't want to screw the multis.
I think what we'll do is go through the discussion, and then when the amendment's introduced, we can talk about that a little bit, if
Fair
that's
enough.
all right.
Yep. All right, yeah. So the only other thing that I would say, other than the fact that, unfortunately, we've sort of gotten away with it for 34 years, now's the time, something is going to have to be done. The suggestion of 4%, I don't see why we can't just make it an even 5. Just in case it's got to react to some kind of a swing. That's the only thing I'd put out, but that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Texera?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to live yesterday, but I want to live present and the future. What happened yesterday, that's the past. To be fair, we should be fair across the board. With the single family, it's not fair to, the way I look at it, it's not fair to go up $15 on the single family, then on the 3 decks, you're going up $30 per unit. On the single family, you got a peace of mind. On the 3 deck, 2, 3, and 4 family, you got tenants. And this is not going to be passed to the tenants. It's the landlord that's going to carry that burden. And the minute you say, I'm going up on your rent, I know how they feel. If we want to be fair, I think we should definitely look into it. We need to go up, but let's be fair across the board. From the single family, on the 3 deck, you got a truck that picks up 3 barrels. On the single family, you got a truck that picks up a barrel. It's the same stop. So the 2 and the 3 and the 4, they're not getting anything extra. First, the single family, it's all the same service. So if you want to be fair, we should be fair across the board. If it's $30 across the board, include the single family, let's do it. But if it's $15, $30 on the 3 decks, it's not fair for the landlord, or try to raise. We know it's tight. Everybody's going through the same scenario. Everything's going up. And let's be fair across the board. Because I'm looking at it, I say I cannot support a single family. I live on a single family. I got a peace of mind. I'm happy on my own. But the people that live on the 2 and the 3 and the 4 family, to go up, and as this, it's tight to make their ends meet. The reason they're on they cannot afford, some of them, they just can't afford a single family. It's because they want to collect the rent to pay for their mortgage and to make sure they get their bills paid. But if we're going to go up, we should go up across the board. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Actually, I think, because otherwise if I comment, it'll be about an amendment that hasn't been introduced yet. So I'd like to offer an amendment to the trash fee proposal and have it read by the clerk, and then we can discuss that, because it'll dovetail into what Councilor Texera just said.
So the motion would be to strike the language following effective on July 1st, 2024, and insert, the fee for single-family owner-occupied homes shall be $85 per quarter. All other units shall be $100 per quarter. effective July 1, 2025, and on each July 1st thereafter. The Commissioner of the Department of Public Works, with the approval of the mayor, may increase the fees by not more than 4% of the annual amount due in order to properly fund refuse collection and recycling, but for no other purpose.
So I would move to introduce that amendment.
Prior to that, just on the motion and prior to it being seconded, would it be possible to split those two amendments and make the fees one amendment and then the 4% increase a separate amendment? I think I can. I understand the reason of having, I understand a 4% increase to keep this fund in balance over the course of the long term. But I also think it's potentially ducking our responsibility as the legislative body to have the DPW check in on this matter, and that way it can be discussed, debated again at the time that increase is needed, and do our job as the purse holder and our fiscal responsibility job to debate it and vote whether we should increase it or not. I don't like automatic increases, especially in fees, taxes. I think that's ducking our responsibility as, as the political body here. And so just so that these are two separate votes, I was hoping we could separate the amendments, move forward one amendment on the increases, one amendment on the automatic 4% increase.
All right, what would be the easiest procedure to do that? I have no problem bifurcating.
Then just no one second your motion.
All right, so let's,
And then we'll just do the first part. I'll read a new motion, which is just with the $85.
all right,
Okay? Is that okay?
all right, so we'll do that. The initial amendment will be just for the change in fees that I submitted and not the 4%.
Okay.
Does that get a second?
Second.
Go
Point
ahead.
of order. I don't think the chair can make the motion to amend. Or motion. Can the chair make a motion?
There's no absolute exclusion upon it. It's frowned upon.
Oh.
But if he's got no other ability to get it through, then that's how it's done.
I have no problem if you want to make the motion for me.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, by all means.
Go ahead.
Withdraw yours.
I'll withdraw and,
Well, if there's nothing in the way, then I just didn't know if that was functional, possible.
well, I hope it's functional. So just on the amendment, colleagues, my thinking was that single-family homes, they don't have an opportunity to, for example, increase very slightly the rent that they charge for their units. $15 more for a 2 or 3 family means another $1.25 a week or $5 a month in the rent, and I thought that would be affordable, even if you're paying rent. My real concern was the people who live in the city who are on a very fixed income. We know some of them, and they live off Social Security. They're in their home, they're trying to hang on to their home and live there, and they don't have a way of augmenting their income. So that was my thinking about trying to hold as much as I can down the fee for single-family homes. I do understand the fairness issue, but I still feel very strongly that if you own rental income property, or if you own property and you're living in one unit and you have a relative living in another, to get together and say, we got to come up with another $1.25 a week or another $5 a month would not be overly burdensome. But obviously, it's the will of the committee on the amendment. So if anyone else would like to speak on this. All right, Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Commissioner, in your calculations, it seems like with the $152,000 in retained earnings, it sounds like, that's pretty out of let's call it a $9.5 million budget. 152,000 seems, like there's, without getting into crazy numbers of $28.75 or something where where we're balancing it essentially to zero or some lower number than the 152. There's really no way to do any further reduction on the multifamily without increasing the single family, essentially looking at these numbers. Is that correct?
Based on the amendment?
Based on like a calculation, right? That because it seems like out of a $9.5 million budget, with there only being $152,000 kind of left over after these calculations are made, that there's really very little room to reduce, let's say, the multifamily without increasing the single family.
Correct. So, I mean, it's a pretty basic calculation, the retained earnings being what they are, with the thought of the enterprise law is that the fees support the structure. So $153,000 in retained earnings is not a big number.
Right. So, I mean, if we sought to reduce multifamily, we'd have to increase single family. There's really no more squeezing unless we get into a ridiculous 25-cent reduction or something like that. So that's essentially the calculation
It
there.
would be
So-
almost impossible to get it down to zero, I guess if that's your question.
Correct, right. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, Councilor Texera.
This is a question for Mr. CFO. If we go across the board, instead $10 per unit and do $8, include the single family, versus $5 per month, $8 per month, $24 per quarter. If you go across the board, are we going to be able to balance the budget?
So say that again, just so I understand.
So instead go $10 per unit on the 2 and 3 and 4 family, go $8 per month or $24 per quarter, include the single family. So across the board, everybody will be paying $24 per month. That's included 2, 3, and a single family.
24 per quarter.
24 per quarter. So $8 a month.
More.
I think Pat's calculating that on the fly, Counselor.
That would generate 2.544288. So 2.5 million. If we went $24 across the board per quarter, per bin, or per service.
Verse 2.395.
Versus 2.16
Or
with the
exact.
amended.
So I'll be,
So in essence, we would have almost $600,000 a year in retained earnings.
what about $7?
Right, so.
It was like, let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal here.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilor Lally.
To skip some steps for the commissioner, 20 on single and 20 on multi comes out to 2.385, which is still $200,000 higher than the current calculation.
20.
Because I see where this is going.
How much that?
I didn't hear what you said. How much?
20, a flat 20 for everything is $2,385,270, probably. I'll let the commissioner check.
Is that
20 flat across the board?
20 flat.
20.
about 60? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good to know I can still do that kind of figuring.
So this was,
What was that number again, Councilor?
20.
20.
No, the total?
2.385.
I'll show you.
2.385.
2, okay.
So just, so I don't get lost here, so for the public and for those of us here, that would mean we would go from $70 per quarter to $90 per quarter per billing unit.
correct.
Correct.
If I'm listening to this right.
Right.
26.5.
So we only going up $5 on a single.
Right?
Come down 10.
120
You're going up 20.
times
No, 5.
4, 5 over
A quarter.
15,
Oh.
120,
You're going up 20, right. No,
which would
you're
reduce
going
our,
5 above
No.
the
would do is
amendment.
reduce our
Amendment,
retained earnings by
correct.
40
You-
grand.
You're right.
Okay. That does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20.
So
That basically gets us in the same position that the amendment, initial amendment proposed would have put us in with the, it's about $40,000 less than the proposed amendment, at $20 per quarter per barrel or per service across the board.
With a retained earning of what?
The retained earnings would be, sorry, my phone shut off.
90,000.
21 and 120.
You realize your whole career hangs on your mathematical ability.
Our career.
Only that were true for some of our counterparts.
It was 40,000, so it'd be about 110.
110,000 in retained,
Yeah.
which is about 40,000 less than.
All right, councilors, at this point, and I apologize to Councilor Azak, ordinarily, the sponsoring councilor gets to speak first. I didn't want to throw her in front of the mayor and Mr. Clarkson, and I know you have a schedule conflict. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Councilor Azak, so we don't have you sitting here and unable to make your next appointment?
Thank you, committee members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, they've pretty much covered everything. The mayor, Mr. Clarkson, and our commissioner have covered everything. And just like you, I know this is hard. Even though I sponsored it, I didn't totally agree with it. But I do think, your amendment, I looked it over. I think it seems pretty fair. So, we have to do what we have to do. It's difficult times, but I think, the residents, if they realize the figure that it's actually coming in, the revenue that's coming in to fill the deficit, I think it'll make it easier to digest. So, and I did speak with the commissioner. Any resident that has real hardship and that they can't pay these fees, I know that they can work with the DPW and they will waive these fees. So that's reassuring for anybody that has really real hardship and can't pay them. But besides that, no, thank you for reviewing this and offering the amendment. And just like anything that comes before us, a councilor has to sponsor it, whether they like it or, that's how it gets before you. So that's why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors, I'd like to withdraw my amendment, if the second would withdraw, for the purposes of having a different amendment offered with respect to the discussion that Councilor Texera initiated. So I will withdraw my motion if the second will withdraw. I don't know who seconded it.
Second.
Okay. So that is withdrawn, Madam Clerk. And now, if there is a motion to amend the order as submitted.
I will make them.
Go ahead, Councilor Texera.
Go ahead.
I will make a motion, to submit the $70 to $90,
Yeah, in other words, a $20.
$20 increase quarterly.
No, with the language that's before us, it'd be, the fee shall be increased to $360, billed at $90 4 times per year.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what the language should say.
Everybody straight on that? All right, that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Do we have further discussion? No further discussion. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Lally,
Yes.
Texera,
Yes.
Farwell,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes,
Nacastro.
Yes.
That motion carried.
All right, now I'm going to go back to my original motion to see how it fares with allowing the mayor and the DPW commissioner to increase the fees by not more than 4% beginning on July 1st, 2025, and thereafter. Is there a second for that?
Second.
All right, there's a second for that. I certainly have comments, but any discussion, Councilor Thompson?
Just to kind of reincorporate my prior comments, I don't like automatic fee increases. I think it's our job to vet any asked increase, make sure that it's appropriate, and and vote as a whole to whether it's appropriate or not. So I would not be in favor of any automatic increase of 4% or any percentage.
All right, Councilor Lally.
I think at the very least, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I think at the very least, this discussion should be about all of the rates and in its own separate, I think it should be an ordinance on its own covering everything, or proposed ordinance. I think that Councilor Thompson makes a very good point about the responsibilities of the council, and our duty, however unpleasant it is to set these rates. So I think it makes sense to vet out more thoroughly and more independently instead of as an amendment. I think it would be a tremendous value to the DPW and to the mayor, but I also do not want to give away a lot of our authority to the executive branch, because if done aggressively, that might mean that the matter, unless we choose to raise it on our own, that might mean that the matter of these rates may never come back before us. And I don't think it was right of prior councils to kick the can down the road to the point where it became a much bigger problem. I do believe that the council does have the right to make that decision if, that's what they choose to do in their time in office. So I would put forward just the suggestion of not raising the amendment tonight, but offering it as a whole package ordinance for its own separate, debate on the merits of it and its constitutional implications at a later point.
Anyone
Thank you,
else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Councilor Castro.
So we're going to $90 a year. Okay, and this proposed amendment would allow an increase of not more than 4%. So 4% of $90 is $14.40. It's really very minimal, and if it keeps the boat in the water and they're being a little bit, that's a max,
Yeah.
a ceiling.
Until the next year.
Right.
Right, that's right.
Sorry.
I don't think it's a bad idea.
Through the chair?
Councilor Lally.
No, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I also think that this is an unpleasant part of the job, but I would rather be able to take the call and say, yes, your bill did go up, yes, here's why, and here's, I think we should be in the practice of being more current and not waiting every 30 years, because it creates a very tough situation, and obviously, by deferring, we're assuming that things will be better in the future. We have to, play it where it lies as it is. But that is, a maximum of $14, as Councilor Thompson said, now. And then it's a maximum of what the next year, and the maximum, because that next maximum is with that 14 included. So it can go up and up. And again, it escapes our control. So should the bill be going up more frequently than every 30 years? Yes. Should it be going up with our, with council involvement? Yes. The council is the, especially the ward seats, no offense to the at-larges, but the ward seats are sent to represent specific, whereas we're as close to the constituency as we can ever possibly be. You know, our own neighborhoods. And that's built like that for a reason. And part of our job is setting these rates. I think that it would make things a lot easier politically for us. And I think it would make things a lot more fluid and a lot easier for the departments that have to depend on political entities for them to have the funding to do their jobs. But I think what we should really be focused on is less about the political convenience and more about our ability to convey the necessity of our actions to our constituency.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but again, it's $14.40.
For now.
Maximum.
Right, but then it's 90 plus 14, it's 4% of 104.
Up to 4%.
Up to 4%, which will be 4%.
I just think keeping the enterprise account in black and not the red is really important.
It is essential,
Yes.
and I would say that with that being the case, we can vote to increase it by $14 next year.
Before I go to Councilor Texera, let me just say this. As the author of the 4%, the trash bill is very small. A water bill can be thousands of dollars for a business. That's why I would not be in favor of allowing, without council approval, raising water and sewer rates, because you could literally cost people hundreds and hundreds of dollars. We already delegate to many other entities in this city the ability to raise rates. Parking authority, they determine all of your parking rates. The health department determines fees. The building department determines fees that we have nothing to do with. So in terms of a government setting, we don't really sit back and control all of the fees. We delegate to the professional people who deal with a specific issue to analyze costs and then to come up with what they think should be the appropriate fee charged. Now, with all due respect to what you said, Councilor Alley, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else, this issue of raising trash fees came up, I think, well over a year ago. We kicked the can down the road. We did. And, you know, and I'm going to be harsh on councilors, present and past. If we had a track record in the city of having politicians elected, and by God, they stepped up to the plate and they did what they were supposed to do, and they raised fees and they made periodic adjustments, we'd probably be in much better financial health. We don't have a very good track record. I mean, we really don't. So my thinking was, you're going to always have a mayor, and you're always going to have a chief financial officer and a DPW commissioner. Those people are in charge of running the city on a daily basis, and they can be in a better position to evaluate cost implications, revenues required, and not depend upon politicians. Because let's face it, a lot of politicians, and there may be future people elected to these seats, they're going to wussy out. They're not going to raise rates. But I do know that I think the mayor, as the chief executive officer and the DPW commissioner, and with the advice of the CFO, would do the right thing. So that was my thinking. I wasn't looking to abdicate any of our responsibility or give up any of our power, and I don't think serving here is about power. I hope it's about common sense and creating a structure of government that's supportive of what people need. But we have not really distinguished ourselves in the last 30 years with respect to raising fees appropriately. And I think, as Councilor Nicastro said, 4% on a trash bill, even if the maximum were done, and it doesn't have to be, it might be 2%, but 4% on a trash bill, it would be very different than 4% on a water bill for a company that maybe pays $1,500, $2,000 a quarter. So that was my thinking. I don't know if that helps clarify anything at all, but Councilor Texera, I'm sorry, you still have a...
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, yeah, no, I don't mean to infer that it was the idea was to, just send this off for somebody else to deal with or anything like that. I think it's I understand where we're going with it, and I do like the idea of where we're going with it, but my concern is when it meets the, real responsibility of the body. I'm worried about where it goes. And to be fair as well, the mayor is also an elected official. He's also a politician. So we're still depending on, a politician somewhere in the system. I think it's up to us and up to our successors to do the best job we can. Yeah, we're gonna have councils like some of our predecessors who, cash in on, shooting down rate increases that wind up causing problems in the future, which is why, this is such a good debate to have. But that, I think, comes back to the form of government that we have, which is, we get sent here to make these decisions. And so if we elect someone who might not be the best at their job, that's they're elected duly. So yeah, that's part of the challenge of the system we've got. Maybe some kind of an ordinance where we automatically review as a body or as an ordinance committee the rate or rates. We automatically review them in July or August of every year. The fiscal year has started. We have the last fiscal year in review. We have an item on a regularly scheduled ordinance committee meeting in which we bring in the CFO and the DPW commissioner and say, hey, how'd the year go? Are we going to need to go up on rates? What are we going to need to do? Some sort of manual version.
And like a budget hearing of some sort.
Oh, a budget hearing. What an idea, Council.
Right.
Well, let's first of all, I can count noses, so let's call a vote. I will say next year is an election year, and if the DPW commissioner comes in and he needs a rate increase for trash, I expect everyone to march in here like Spartacus in the arena and say, by God, we're going to do it. So just be prepared. That's why I was kind of looking for a mechanism to get this done in a reasonable way by the professionals who do the cost analysis. But if there's no objection, why don't we call a vote, because we do still have a fairly robust agenda. Any objections?
No objection. Let's call the vote.
Now, so on the motion, would you call the roll?
Lally,
No.
Texera,
No.
Farwell,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Nacastro.
Yes.
So it fails 2-3.
All right, the amendment fails, and I thank all of you seriously for a good discussion and things to think about. Definitely things to think about. All right, let's go on to the next.
Before you go on, there needs to be a motion to recommend it favorably as amended.
Motion to recommend the item favorably as amended.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor? All those opposed? It is a vote unanimously. Thank you again. All right, now we go on to item number 1.
Ordinance, an ordinance adopting a new section to Chapter 12, Section 7, Bridge and Park Cleaning Ordinances for the purposes of scheduled cleanings to improve the public health conditions within the city. Invited to attend, Jeffrey Thompson, Ward 5 Counselor. Assistant City Solicitor, Stacy Kleinverdi, or Designee of Law Department, Brenna Perez, Chief of Police, Patrick Hill, Commissioner of Department of Public Works, Tim Carpenter, Superintendent of Parks.
I'll just stay here if that's okay.
Yes, you stay there, Councilor Thompson. You're the sponsor, so please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, good evening, members of the Ordinance Committee. So this matter comes back before us. It was postponed from the last Ordinance Committee meeting so that we could do some further work on this cleaning amendment. A cleaning ordinance. And so listening to this body and the DPW commissioner and the Parks commissioner and the chief of police from their feedback from our last ordinance committee meeting and also discussions after that, I believe that the ordinance before you is a more streamlined and a more broad ordinance than it was before. When last time I was before you, this cleaning ordinance was specific to the MBTA bridges, essentially downtown, and also specifically DW Field Park, Perkins Park, and the Salisbury River Plain Park, AKA Finnegan Park. It was discussed at that time that there was a desire to broaden this ordinance by including essentially all city property, both controlled by DPW and by the Parks Department. And so listening to that feedback, we amended this ordinance to include any public property within the city of Brockton. And so that way, this specific process is applicable to the whole city. And again, we have to understand is why are we putting forward this ordinance? And for two reasons. Number one is because it's to deal with the unhoused population, the issue of encampments, and having a process in place which allows the city to clean these encampments, both for biological contamination and, other contamination that accrues in these encampments. So it puts a process in place where we're respectful to the unhoused, but we're also, we're also allowing the city to do its proper job and its proper duty to keep this city clean, keep it safe from bacterial contamination or other just, general mess. And so that's what this ordinance does. It's a time, place, and manner. It directs the Brockton Police Department to show up prior to any cleaning so that they can inform the unhoused that a cleaning will take place in this area and allow them time to collect their property. It is then followed up by the Social Services Department coming in behind them to speak with any of the unhoused and provide and try to provide them services if they so desire, to put them in a better place if they want that. And then lastly, for DPW, the Parks Department to come in behind them to make the proper cleaning. And this type of process has been happening informally for the past year now with great success in this city. I think it's best that we have this as an ordinance so that it's on the books, that it's defendable, that it's predictable, and it accomplishes the task in which we seek, and that's keeping a safe and clean Brockton. So just additionally, some of the amendments that were added in addition to making this applicable to the whole city was to give a little more flexibility both to the Parks Department and the DPW Department as to the locations in which they are going to clean and the time frame in which they can clean it. And so I know Commissioner Carpenter wanted to have the time frame in which these cleanings would occur to be the same for both DPW and the Parks Commission, and that is accomplished in this ordinance. The time frames would be 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Additionally, there's some flexibility with the police department. Now, speaking with the chief and speaking with Captain Hallisey, it's the expectation that the Brockton Police Department will be present for all of these cleanings. They have, I believe, the manpower to do so. I was promised, let's say promised, but I was told by the Brockton Police Department that if manpower became, short, then their supervisors would step up and provide the proper, the proper presence at these locations. And, I believe that to be the case. But if for unseen circumstances an emergency arises and the Brockton Police are not able to be present, then we would allow them not to be present and move forward with the cleaning or reschedule, which I think may be a better option. But essentially, in those very rare circumstances in which the Brockton PD is not available, then we could either move forward without Brockton PD or reschedule the cleaning. So I think this is a good ordinance, which implements the feedback from this committee and from the department heads involved in operating or, doing the cleaning. And so I believe it's clear, it's concise, it puts everybody on notice on how this is to be done, it's defendable, and I think it respects both the unhoused and allows the city to do its job. And so I ask that this matter be voted favorably. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilors, any questions, any comments? Councilor Nicastro.
I do prefer the proposed amendment, which covers the entire city. I just have a question. Can we direct the Parks Department to do that, or don't they work for their Parks Commission, and aren't they the ones that set what the Parks Department does? Good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening, councilors. So I guess in a way you are correct. It is the Parks Commission whom I report to, on a daily and a monthly basis. However, there is some leeway, in my opinion, as to the day-to-day operations that befalls me as the superintendent of parks. And I think this clearly falls within the duties that the Park Commission has ascribed to me in my day-to-day duties.
Would the Parks Commission have to approve this?
I don't believe so, again, because
Because it's in your daily.
because it is part of the, again, the daily tasks assigned to me through the Park Commission, which is, really to work for the benefit of the parks system as a whole within the city. So I don't think that this necessarily flies in the face of anything that the Park Commission would have to approve.
Okay. Attorney Resnick, I'd be interested in an opinion.
I mean, I'd have to research it. I'm not familiar with
Okay.
that aspect of it, so I'm happy to look at it.
I mean, the Parks Commission doesn't provide to me my daily tasks.
Right.
So, again, I think that this particular function as a superintendent of parks is well within the normal day-to-day functioning of the position.
Okay.
But I'm not an attorney, so.
I have it here, but I can't read it fast enough.
And if I could just hop in quickly, I also just wanted to add one last thing that I would expect both from the DPW department and the Parks Department to add into their budget the requisite, employment, the non-overtime or overtime costs to make sure that you have the funding to execute these cleanings. So I would hope to see that in your budgets, and I would be one to approve those budgets that allow for the cleaning of the parks as mandated.
That just the chair would just say that would be a mayoral decision, and FY25 coming up may be tough, but we'll see. Anyone else? I have a couple of questions, but anyone else before I... Councilor Nicastro, are you all done?
I'm all set. It's time.
I guess my question is going to be for the solicitor, and I know she's filling in for Attorney Verdi. Solicitor Bridges, where in statute or case law is it mandated that we provide 48 hours notice to clean an area where unhoused populations are located?
It's not. It's a policy decision.
It's a policy decision
Correct.
by the mayor?
Though maybe it would be helpful to provide a little bit of how we got here, but the law department was tasked with fashioning a solution to the public health and safety issues raised that are occurring in our parks and under our bridges. And in light of the Supreme Court case that is Johnson v. Grants Pass, we fashioned what was the original draft that you all saw, in consultation with Mr. Hill, Mr. Carpenter, the mayor's office, maybe folks here. And the Supreme Court hasn't yet answered that question. So in attempting to find a solution to appease what were complaints from property owners, council members, community members, business owners, residents, employees of downtown businesses, we came up with what we thought was constitutionally lawful in light of no answer yet to the camping in public question, or the limits on the camping in public question. So 48 hours is not sanctioned by anyone or anybody, or not any, two words, anybody, and not the mayor. It was an attempt at the best form of notice for folks who were going to be on the other side of the cleanup.
Here's my problem with that. We give 48 hours notice. There is no guarantee that other people can't come into that area that's going to be cleaned 12 hours before cleaning, 5 hours before cleaning, and sometimes you will have legal action taken because a community violates its own policy. So, for example, what good would it be if we go up to the park and we give notice that 48 hours from now we're going to clean this area, and in the meantime 5 more or 10 more people come into that area, they haven't received any notice, so now we've set ourselves up where we violated our own policy.
Well, that was exactly why it was originally written with prescription.
I'm sorry, was what?
Prescription. It was going to occur on these days at these times. Because of course we can't, no one keeps attendance at public spaces where folks are housing themselves. This is a policy question. This was an attempt at best practices fashioned after some comparable communities to address the problems here.
But why
So
not
it
just-
wouldn't go.
I was going to say, why not just do it as a policy and strip it out of the ordinance? Why ordain it when in fact you could have a mayor at some point who will say, listen, I'm only going to give 12 hours notice?
If my memory serves me, that was the request of my department, was to ordain it.
Okay, who made that request, you know?
I mean, these weren't the type of questions that I came here prepared to answer. I thought we were talking about the constitutionality of, sleeping and camping in public. But you don't have to do it. There is certainly no offense taken by me. We were asked to help address the problem, and this was the best fashion for the problem.
So if it came out, though, we could still do it. It would be voluntary. The mayor or the police chief or whomever is designated would have the opportunity to give notice to the people, but it just wouldn't be mandated by an ordinance. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's fair. I would just remind the group in this dialogue that business owners and members of the public outside of these walls were part of the impetus for the creation of this. So policy happens in numerous ways. Absolutely right. I thought this was what we were asked to do.
The only thing I would say is that if the city gets sued because we violated our 48-hour rule and didn't give someone notice and we came along and moved their belongings and cleaned, the business owners aren't going to be the defendants. The city will be.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily concerned about the 48-hour notice or the violation, and that's not, I don't think, the biggest piece of this conversation. I think it's, do you want something codified that lets folks know when they're going to be cleaned, or do you not? And I have no stake in the answer to that question.
All right, the last question I have, because I do know you represent the mayor. Item E.
I represent the city, sir.
The city, yes, but reporting to the mayor. Item E, at the time of the cleaning, the Director of Social Services and/or designee shall accompany the Department of Public Works and/or Parks Department staff in order to provide any persons at the location with information regarding the cleanings and other services available to the residents of the city of Brockton. Now, number one, some people may not speak English, so you might have to have somebody bilingual, But my major concern is, as a legislative body, should we basically be telling the mayor that on a particular day, at a particular time, you've got to take someone out of your office and assign them to duty? Because that starts us really down, you know, that old slippery slope. Could we mandate that the police chief always have a traffic enforcement car on West Chestnut Street? Could we mandate that the Board of Health always have an inspector doing restaurant inspections on on Fridays because of the upcoming weekend? And that concerns me. It almost seems like we're micromanaging.
Philosophically, I don't disagree with you, but I would refer back to my earlier comments, and this draft was created in consultation with the mayor's office and with reference to other communities who are tackling the problem. And so if folks are actually going to tackle if policymakers are actually going to tackle the problem, then you need to provide the suite of services necessary to the folks that need help and solutions. So the mayor's office was consulted. Certainly they were consulted. I don't disagree with your larger point, but in here, in this case, much kind of like the refuse fee you all heard earlier, I mean, my task generated from the mayor's office. Help us try and figure out this problem. So certainly we can go back to him and ask.
Well, and just in response to that, if we pass this as part of an ordinance, because the Director of Social Services is on mayor's staff, you could have a mayor that doesn't have that position filled. You could literally not have a Director of Social Services.
You could. I'm not sure how we would be dealing with a homelessness problem, because that's the larger subject matter that we're talking about.
But each mayor brings his or her own staff in and decides the positions and the titles and the job duties. But if we make this an ordinance, in my opinion, what we've said is, you're going to always have to have a Director of Social Services, and that person or their designee is always going to have to go out, no matter what else the mayor may have planned, no matter what other job duties they may have, they're going to have to go out and accompany the DPW and the Park Department staff on a cleanup. And it just seems so foreign for a legislative body to do that. I can't imagine the legislature telling the governor, you're going to take one of your staff members, and they're going to go out on a particular day and they're going to do something.
Again, I don't disagree, but this was a coordinated effort, and much like the mayor controls the social services director, he also controls Mr. Hill and to a certain extent, Mr. Carpenter. And so it's a coordinated effort amongst these folks. It wouldn't be a surprise. Oh, got to send the social services person because we're going to do a cleanup right now. That's at least not what I understood. But you're not wrong. And I guess I don't read it in here anywhere that you have to have one. This was just best practices for how to approach the problem.
And then I'll close this out by saying, yes, it's a coordinated effort, but mayors change.
Oh, sure.
Staff members change, and priorities change. And now we're wrestling with a homeless issue. 5-10 years from now, we could have an entirely different issue. I can't imagine what it is, and once you pass an ordinance, that lives on forever. That isn't a policy decision anymore. That's not something that is discretionary. We take an oath to follow the laws of the Commonwealth and the ordinances of the city of Brockton, and it just seems like we as a council would be locking in the mayor and at least one member of his staff to certain duties on days that we have to do cleanup, instead of just saying the mayor's office will cooperate with the Public Works Department and Park Department when cleanups occur. I could live with that. Just cooperation.
We just did our best.
You know.
If I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
And thank you for your comments, Madam Solicitor. I think what we need to focus on is what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to set a policy in which allows for the city to do a specific act, and that's to clean up encampments and biological contamination that occurs in these encampments, and that's a necessary function of the city. The reason why we're directing these departments to be involved is because these are the departments that handle the homeless or the unhoused issue. What we're trying to do is develop a policy which is which takes into account the needs of our unhoused population. That's why we have social services present. That's why we have the Brockton Police Department present. So I just think, we can get as general as we like. I think it's often, we are the policymakers, right? This legislative body is a policy board. We do direct different different departments to do specific jobs. We just passed a roadway ordinance a few months ago. In that ordinance, we're directing the police to do a certain task. And we're giving them, the even specific streets in which we want them to put their efforts in. And so it's not beyond reason for this body to direct different departments to accomplish specific duties that we believe are in the best interest of the city. And I believe that this ordinance is just another example of us as a legislature developing policy which focuses on a specific problem in this city, and we're trying to coordinate the efforts of the city to accomplish that goal. And so I'm hoping that, I understand your objections, but, I think I've tried to incorporate as much of the input from this board and from the department heads. Nothing's perfect, but I think this is a good ordinance that provides direction on a specific problem, and let's just see how it goes. And if in the future, like a lot of our ordinances, we need to amend it, tweak it, then that's what we'll do. But we have to start somewhere, and I believe this is a good start. So if no one else has anything, I make a motion to approve.
Can we
Okay.
procedurally? You haven't made a motion yet on the amendment.
On the
just so
amendment,
you
I
know.
apologize. Just so that we have it, and we can have further discussion after, but just so that we have it, on the table, I make a motion to amend the ordinance as drafted before you, Madam Clerk.
On the motion?
You just,
Oh, second.
second? Okay, go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that this revised edition, I think this really addresses a lot of what we talked about at the last meeting. I think this came out really well. My only question, and it would be probably to the solicitor, Section E, referring to the 48 hours notice. Chairman Farwell's concerns about that, I just wanted to ask for my own personal satisfaction. Do you feel that we expose ourselves to any unnecessary legal risk with the way this is formatted now? Or the fact that we provided notice is the fact that we provided notice, and if somebody was there and they didn't get it, then they didn't get it?
I think we could modify it so that it says, something along the lines of to the greatest extent possible. Originally, when we drafted it, my thought would be that it would be a permanent notice. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, these are the bridge cleaning days. So now that it's taken a little bit of a different approach, no one's entitled to the notice. Let me say that. The first answer to your question, no legal liability. I don't see any there. It's not a constitutional issue on the notice. It's a constitutional issue on if we're throwing away their things and if we're criminally prosecuting them or treating them in a different cruel and unusual way. So no, I do not think the notice exposes legal liability. Could we look at the language, adding some type of disclaimer, or we'd have to figure out the logistics on how to get a notice posted. But the notice was courtesy.
Yeah. All right. Well, as long as the intent is courtesy, and then I'm fine with it the way it is. If my colleagues feel a need to tweak the language, I get it. but I would be comfortable voting for this in its current form.
And-
Thank you,
and-
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. You could change shall to may, if I could speak. Through you to the Legislative Council, you could, in the minimal change of changing shall to may would accomplish what I understand to be the concern.
And I think that's appropriate. And just secondly, the notice is to a location and not a person.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you. Correct. So there is, correct.
Okay, that was part of my inquiry. Okay. Yeah, that's all
Correct.
I've got. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What do you want, are you making a motion to change it to May?
No, there's a motion on the floor, and I would
Well,
defer
then-
to the sponsor anyway.
Then, Madam Clerk, let me amend my motion to amend the ordinance as drafted before you with the addition of, in, where is it, paragraph C, the notice shall be posted to read notice may be posted.
Oh, yeah, C, okay.
I think it's E.
D and C were deleted, so I think it would be...
I think there's a track change and then there's a
Okay.
non-track change.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I have it.
Okay.
All right, so I have a question, the chair has a question for Councilor Thompson on, let me see, on item G, at the time of cleaning, can you live with inserting after the word cleaning, if available, the Director of Social Services and/or designee shall accompany the Department of Public Works? That gives flexibility to the mayor's office if the Director of Social Services is not available or is otherwise assigned or is out of town or on vacation. Any objection to inserting, if available, the Director of Social Services?
I mean, I think it has the language and/or its designee. And so a designee, I would assume, would always be available, whether, who that designee may be.
I would say to you, though, in this mayor's office, there's only one person who's trained by education and experience. So if she were not available...
I mean, I'm not, yeah, I mean, I don't want to die on that hill, but Director of Social Services or their designee, if available, shall accompany.
Or a representative of the mayor's office?
Well, that would be a
Yeah,
designee, right?
it's covered in that, yeah.
So after designee, add if available, that's livable?
That's fine.
Then, Madam Clerk, I would move to insert after the word designee in item G, the words if available, so that it would read, at the time of the cleaning, the Director of Social Services and/or designee, if available, shall accompany the Department of Public Works and/or Parks Department staff in order to provide persons at the location with assistance, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you accept it as a friendly amendment, because we already have a motion to amend on the table that hasn't been acted upon?
Yeah, I would accept that as a friendly amendment,
Valid
right, on the
change, yeah.
existing amendment on the table,
Yep.
on the floor.
And that is the amendment to change shall to may.
Correct.
All right, second.
No.
No.
No, Chalamet is being treated as a friendly as well.
Okay, all right. In that case, my already old second stands. Yeah.
So I think we're ready to vote on the amendments?
No.
No, I'm sorry, Councilor
No.
DeCastro.
Thank you. Okay, up at the very top, it directs to adopt a new section to Chapter 12, Section 7, quote, Bridge and Park Cleaning Ordinance, close quote. Now, Chapter 12 falls in Article 6 of the ordinances, which is motor vehicle and traffic/pedestrians. I don't think it should be called Bridge and Park Cleaning Ordinance anymore. What do you want to call it instead?
Susan's Law?
Certainly not Jeffrey's Law.
Yeah, sure, we'll take that.
Does it have to have a name?
Yeah, well, of course.
It does not have to have a name. The company that we use kind of goes in and puts them where they need to be. But you could just call it the Bridge/Park Cleaning Program, which is what you have on 12 the first part.
Designate, well,
Well, it's an ordinance that describes what it does. I don't...
But it's more than just bridges and parks
Yeah.
in this current iteration.
Public property cleaning ordinance?
Yeah, how about that?
Fine. So
Another friendly amendment.
let's make that as a friendly amendment, public property cleaning ordinance.
We're getting real friendly on this committee.
Worst things could happen.
Yes. The second still stands.
Yeah. Or, yes.
Could we, if there's no further deliberation, could we get a roll call
On the amendment.
on the amendment?
Lally,
Yes.
Texera,
Yes.
Farwell.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Nacastro.
Yes.
That carries.
Okay, so now it's, someone make a motion to
motion
recommend favorably to
as
the
amended.
full council.
Yep,
Second.
make a motion to recommend favorably as amended to the full city council.
Motion properly made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? All those opposed? It is a vote.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor, appreciate it.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Yeah, item number 2, if you will just read it, and then it's going to be postponed to the next ordinance meeting.
An ordinance adopting a new section of the ordinances of the City of Brockton requiring solicitation of qualified consultants and proposed scopes of services and fees scheduled for any board or commission that requires an independent outside consultant review for any project submitted by an applicant in which the payment of the fee for those consulting services are paid for by the applicant invited to attend. Jeffrey Thompson, Ward 5 Councilor. Rob May, Director of Economic Planning and Development. Michael Morris, Chief Procurement Officer. Megan Bridges, City Solicitor or her designee.
Mr. Chair, due to some scheduling conflicts, I make a motion to postpone this agenda item to the next ordinance committee.
Second.
All right, motion made and properly seconded. All in favor? All opposed? It is a vote. Item number 3.
An ordinance amending Article 4, Division 2, City Auditor to create a new position for Assistant City Auditor for School Finance to supervise, conduct, and coordinate audit assignments relative to school finance. Invited to attend, Winthrop Farrell Jr., Counselor at Large, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Irene Giannopoulos, Interim City Auditor.
Why don't we, as we wait for Mr. Clarkson, why don't we just take a brief recess?
Okay.
All right, the ordinance committee will be back in session. We did not conduct any business. We waited for Mr. Clarkson to arrive, and we will now proceed to item number 3 on the agenda.
I read 3.
You already read it?
I read it.
Okay. Mr. Clarkson, when we were last here, and I sponsored this, we did ask for some additional information, which you were kind enough to provide. You provided the salary schedule for the city, and the assistant auditor for school finance. The proposal ran from 106,917 to 116,831. And we also have the employment contract for the deputy chief financial officer over in the school department. Would it be fair to say that he functioned as an auditor? If you know?
I do believe that they had on staff a couple of accountants. So I think that position was more aligned with the assistant chief financial officer, the one that you have listed as F1.
Okay. There is something that I want to mention tonight, councilors, and I think it's very important. If you look at the employment contract for the deputy chief financial officer in the school department, and it's an individual contract, one-on-one, that position is paid a ratio of whatever the master's degree maximum salary is for the members of the Brockton Education Association. So to the extent that someone were the deputy chief financial officer or auditor in the school department, and they were providing information about what can the school department afford, what can be negotiated for the contract, we've basically, as a city, set them up to be in a conflict of interest. They would be arguing benefits to which they're going to receive a ratio, and in 2024, the ratio was 1.85. So if a certain amount of salary goes up by an amount, 1.85 of that amount would go to the position in the school department. And I have to tell you, Mr. Clarkson, I hope that you'll do everything you can to address that. That just simply isn't right. I can see principals having a ratio, but not financial people who are giving confidential information to the school department and school superintendent. So, but let's go on to the need for this, because I really submitted this because I think there is an overwhelming need, and I think the evidence is overwhelming, that greater accountability and greater scrutiny of school department revenues and expenses needs to be done by the city of Brockton. So with that, I'll just let you pick up on the discussion from there. This was postponed from our last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've stated publicly before, I support the creation of these positions. The budget that will be submitted to you in a couple of weeks includes funding for these positions. You'll see the Deputy Chief Financial Officer in the finance budget, and the Assistant Auditor for School Finance in the auditor's budget, but we do intend to then credit that back through the Schedule 19 and the net school spending calculation, so that the schools will be financially responsible for these positions, but administratively, there'll be positions that will come up administratively through the city and ultimately to the mayor. Having assumed a greater role in the oversight of the school finances over the last several months, I think we've seen the need for greater engagement and oversight by the city, and the simple fact is that having positions dedicated to this effort will allow us the ability to exercise that greater oversight.
And just for the record, and it is a separate ordinance, councilors, but just for the record, the assistant auditor would have a salary range of, and I just had it, 106,917, 110,125, 113,428, and 116,831. The comparable position on the school side currently is about $179,000. So it's $63,000 less in the ordinance that I have suggested, which is part and parcel of creating an assistant auditor. So there's nothing more I need to say. I think the public discussion, I think the newspaper articles that have come out, I think the work that the chief financial officer has had to undertake to get us to the successful point where we are speaks for itself. So with that, if there are questions, I'd be glad to have the committee.
Motion to recommend favorably?
Just on the motion.
On the motion, Councilor Thompson.
You know, I've had some time to think about this since it's been proposed, and you know, I'm just having some difficulty at this point creating 2 additional positions for over $100,000 each position, where I understand you know, some additional resources in your department, especially, you know, given the situation we find ourselves in. Would you say that if these positions were in effect 2 years ago, that we would not be in the current position we're in right now?
I think and I'm choosing my words carefully here intentionally, I think there were multiple system failures, so I don't want to offer that assurance, but certainly if there were people that were dedicated to providing oversight and there was a structure that allowed that oversight, things may have been different, but it's a very difficult question to answer, because what we've discovered, as you know, through just as we've seen with the Open Architects report, there were multiple system failures.
So I mean, these created positions do not have the authority to basically go through the books over on the school side. They'd be dependent upon the numbers presented to them from the schools.
So I don't know, Counselor, that the premise to your question is accurate, but I think that's a question more appropriately posed to the lawyers. I think there have been some discussions since the school deficit emerged about how well Chapter 324 of the Acts of 1990 equips the city, the CFO, the mayor to exercise that oversight.
Right, so there's still structural issues that need to be resolved to really kind of delve into the heart of the situation we find ourselves in. And that's why I believe, honestly, these ordinances are kind of putting the cart before the horse, where we still have these structural issues that need to be resolved. And then, you know, I know there was some talk about offsets on the school side, but I definitely like to see those offsets. You know, I just don't, you know, I don't want to hope that an offset on the school side would, you know, would materialize to budget for these ordinances. I know I'm having a hard time at this point to agree to 2 new positions that I'm not exactly sure at this point would have prevented the problem we find ourselves at. And I believe there are 2 audits that I'd like to hear back from about what some of their planned resolutions are to the structural issues that we have, and if that's some consolidation issues, then I would be more, I would entertain creating positions if we're doing some sort of merge or essentially a merger. So I understand. I'm not comfortable at this point moving forward. I'm not going to hold this matter up. I think it has to be a vote of the will of this body and the council. But I'm not going to hold this up. But I'm going to vote unfavorably. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anyone else? All right.
Councilor Lally, I did not hear who seconded his motion.
I'm sorry?
On his motion to recommend favorably, I did not hear who seconded him.
I need a second.
Oh,
Second.
Didn't you make the motion?
He made the motion. I don't think
I
anyone
said
seconded it.
I need a second. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Second.
All right. And I was going to say, just on the motion, we'll probably have close to a $230 million school budget next year, $240 million. As of July 1st, your office is going to be working on it with TJ, Plant, and others. My understanding is the employment contracts for a couple of people in the school department that are in the finance office are expiring. Is that correct? Am I?
I don't know. I'm not involved in that aspect of it. But Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the funding question that Councilor Thompson raised, because the question about whether or not this expense would be then credited is knowable, because that amount of the appropriation for the schools, net of this cost, is proposed to you by the mayor and then voted on by the city council. So that number is known and determined at the time that appropriation is presented to you by the mayor. So it's at least my intent to put forth a number that recaptures the costs of these positions, should you approve them. If you don't, then that money will shift back to the schools.
And councilors, I would just say, a little earlier we spoke about our responsibility to set fees, to take on the hard issues of the city. And it would be impossible, I think, to just cast aside what has happened since last September 5th with school finances and not say that we have an obligation to this community, particularly where there's over $200 million involved, to create a structure with the CFO that will allow us to monitor expenses, revenues, make sure we don't have to give grant money back, which was one of the most recent articles in the newspaper. I don't disagree with Councilor Thompson. No one likes to create new positions, but these two positions, at least in my professional view, will allow the chief financial officer and the city and the mayor, who's ultimately responsible for city finances, to be able to know what's going on. And I do believe that Chapter 324 places the chief financial officer squarely in control of budgets, and I think this will be a good step forward. And I think the people who are watching us will say that we were proactive and not reactive, and that we want to go forward with that structure. With respect to the audits and the investigations being done, I don't believe they're operational in nature. I don't think either one is going to come back and either recommend positions or recommend eliminating positions. I think it's more fact-finding, but ultimately we'll know. So I appreciate all of the discussion on this. And Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. On the motion, I don't want to waste money. I don't. And I appreciate Councilor Thompson's concerns. But we, as a council, cannot control what the schools do. So will there be some duplicating efforts? Yeah, there may be. Someone on the school side, someone on the city side. But I think it's imperative. We're in this mess. The city is in this mess because of overspending on the school side that wasn't caught on the city side. And I think there has to be a dedicated pair of eyes. And so I am going to support this, both tonight and at council. Thank you.
All right, anything further? If not, there's motion to recommend favorably, and we can do that by hand vote, correct?
You can-
Can we do a roll call?
Oh, let's do a roll call vote, I'm sorry.
Lally,
Yes.
Texera,
Yes.
Farwell.
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Nacastro.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-1.
Item number 4.
Ordinance, an ordinance amending Article 4, Division 4, Chief Financial Officer to create a new position for Assistant Chief Financial Officer for school finance to assist in policies and procedures affecting the school department budget and procurement and to monitor the performance of the school department budget. Invited to attend, Winthrop Burrell Jr., Counselor at Large, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Councilors, Mr. Clarkson can comment. I think it's all been said before. This salary range, which will come up in item number 5, runs from 137,465 to 141,558 to 145,805 to 150,179. The current person who is the chief financial officer in the school department is at $209,000. So we would be at $59,000 less based on our salary schedule compared with the schools. I don't know if you have anything you want to say before the councilors question you.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think the issues and the dynamics to this position are similar to the ones that you just discussed.
Anyone else? All right, could we have a roll call? Would someone make a motion to recommend favorably, please?
Motion. Second.
All right, and we have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
1 second. Lally,
Yes.
Texera,
Yes.
Farwell,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Nacastro.
Yes.
Motion carried 4-1. Item number 5.
Item number 5.
Ordinance, an ordinance amending Article 3, Division 2, Section 2-127 Pay Plan to establish pay plan provisions for the position of Assistant City Auditor for School Finance and Assistant Chief Financial Officer for School Finance. Invited to attend, Winthrop Burrell Jr., Counselor at Large, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
So I basically just read the salary ranges, which came right out of our ordinance book. I don't think there's anything more I need to say. As I say, it's these positions will be paid much less than comparable positions on the school side, and I might add that we do not grant union benefits to our non-union ordinance positions the way the school department has, which I think you've described as being most lucrative, more than you've seen in any other community. Am I phrasing that correctly?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, could you just, I apologize, sorry. Mr. Chair, if you could just reiterate for everyone, what would be the salary range for the proposed the Assistant City Auditor for School Finance?
Yes, the Assistant City, not the Chief Financial Officer now, just the Auditor.
Right, for the Assistant City Auditor.
Assistant City Auditor, which, by the way, we have one now, and that's the salary range we're paying. 106,917 is step 1. 110,125 is step 2. 113,428 is step 3. And 116,831 is step 4. And that's in our current ordinance pay scale.
And does this ordinance also allow for the 3% increase by direction of the mayor thereafter?
If you reach top step, and if you have a performance evaluation done, yes.
So that's plus 3%.
That's a prerequisite. You have to be a top step, and you have to have a performance evaluation done.
That's a separate ordinance, right?
Yes, that's a separate ordinance, but it would apply because this is being incorporated into
The pay scale.
master pay
Right.
plan. Yeah.
And could you also, for the Assistant Chief Financial Officer for School Finance, the same?
Yes, that is correct. It's the Assistant Chief Financial Officer for School Finance and Procurement would be 137,465. Step 2 would be 141,558. Step 3 would be 145,805. And step 4 would be 150,179. And if my memory is correct, that salary scale is for the senior assistant city solicitor.
And that would also include said 3% increase with the performance review.
Yes, once the person reaches top step, yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Morris is here.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Castro.
I just want to remind everyone that at our last meeting, at Councilor Lally's suggestion, we amended this ordinance to say that it would be paid from Schedule 19 at the discretion of the CFO and the mayor.
I still like that.
And I have a question related to that. So the budget approved by the school committee for the schools may come in without providing for this, for these positions to be paid out of Schedule 19. But then it would be your job with the mayor to make any adjustments that you feel are in the best interest of the city budget prior to proposing it to the city council, right?
That is correct, Counselor, and that's what I was referencing a few minutes ago. The back and forth between the school committee and both the city council and the mayor is a natural process that happens in every community, whether it's a town meeting or a city council, but ultimately it is the job of the executive to propose the level of funding to you, so long as it relates to educational funding, it meets the state requirement. And so that's a fairly straightforward but detailed calculation that starts with what they call the foundation budget. For next year is a little over $300 million. And then there are reductions for city costs, most prominent of which is health insurance. We carry all of those costs on the city side. So that top number is reduced by the cost that the city incurs in support of public education. So these, when that number is calculated for the mayor to then present to you to make that lump sum appropriation, those costs would be deducted.
Even over the objection of the school committee?
Yes, the job of the appropriation rests with the mayor and then the city council.
And that's my understanding as well, and I'm rather sensitive to that, since the council has been accused by some school committee members of not fully funding the budget that they propose. But in fact, it is a proposal. It's approved by them and proposed. And if it's not what ultimately comes to us, we have to work on what comes to us.
Indeed, and in fact, last year, for this current year, the budget has been discussed at length in a variety of different forums. But the budget that the mayor proposed and that you ultimately approved for the Brockton Public Schools was several $1 million above the net school spending numbers. So that, and I would say, this is conjecture on my part, but that was due to the fact that the mayor and the city council have a very steadfast support of public education.
But it was also lighter on non-net school spending. In other words, the school committee voted to submit X, but what was submitted to us was actually Y because of the actions or because of the decision-making of the mayor and you.
That is correct. The number that was proposed to the city council for non-net was lower than what was asked, and as we've discussed, and again in a variety of public forums, the conversation that the mayor and I had with the school officials at the time was the difference was 11 and 14 million, essentially.
That's right.
That we're going to recommend 11, and we'll see how that is spent, and then if additional funds are needed, we will seek a transfer before the city council. But obviously there were a variety of intervening events that occurred since then, and we've learned that the number was much larger, and we're contending with a number that's far greater than 14 million.
This is my 7th year on the council. The schools, to my recollection, have never come in for more money. They've never come back to us. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council Lally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to offer a point of information off of what Councilor Castro has been saying. In the councilor's 7 years, in my 9, this school committee has not come back for additional money. And in that time, we have also not cut what has been proposed to us from the schools in the mayor's budget presented to us every year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion for this?
We still need a motion for favorable, correct?
Correct.
Motion to recommend favorably?
Second?
Motion made and properly second to recommend favorably. Roll call vote, please.
Lally,
Yes.
Texera,
Yes.
Farwell,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Castro.
Yes.
Motion carried 4-1.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right,
Thank you.
Item number 6.
Thank you, Ms. Clarkson.
Morris is here, so we can proceed.
Number 6, ordinance, an ordinance amending Article 2, Section 13-4 to establish competitive bidding practices conducted by the city procurement officer for transportation contracts for special education students. Invited to attend, Winthrop Burrell Jr., Counselor at Large, Michael Morris, Chief Procurement Officer.
Councilors, the reason I filed this is because under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, special education services are exempt from bidding, and that includes special education transportation, though it is a very expensive undertaking by, I would say, every community. So this ordinance merely says that special education transportation would go out to bid, and I had a discussion with Legislative Council today. It wouldn't change anything that the school committee is doing. They determine transportation policy. They would set up the routes. They would put together the bid documents. They would transmit the bid documents to the Chief Procurement Officer. He would publish them, and then the bids would be opened, and then the awarding authority is the school committee. The only thing that Mr. Morris would be doing really would be a conduit between the vendors who respond to the solicitation for bids and the awarding of the bid. But then I did put in the ordinance that I wanted on the website a published list of the vendors selected. So I just want to assure everyone, nothing changes on the school side, adds a little bit of work to Mr. Morris's plate because he would have to publish and then have the bids close. But the awarding authority, the selection of the successful vendor or vendors would still remain with the school committee, as is proper under current state law in Chapter 71. If there are any, yes, Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Morris.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, you stated that the current policy under state statute, the transportation contracts for special education students does not require procurement.
That's correct. It does not require compliance with 30B. Many communities do go out to bid, but it's not required.
Okay, and so this basically is an opt-in, in a sense, where it will now be required for student transportation for special needs to go to procurement or follow 30B.
Yeah, it would be a policy decision. The ordinance would be a policy decision that this city will go out to open competitive bidding for special ed transportation.
And what's the current practice where they enter into these service agreements, which we find ourselves in right now? And so this ordinance would prevent a one-on-one service agreement and require compliance with 30B where there's a bid process?
Well, you could still have a one-on-one. For example, let's say Thompson Transportation sent in a bid solicitation first of all, it would be broken down by routes. Obviously, there are some long-distance routes, there are some in-city routes, there are some short-distance routes, and all of the different amounts that would be charged, I would think, by the vendors would be based on time, distance, mileage, number of students. But you could have multiple contracts, and we do now. We have I want to say over 100 different vendors, Michael, if I'm correct, that
Yes, that is correct.
provide transportation. The problem is that if a student moves into the city and we need transportation, we have no benchmark as to what that should cost, because we don't have a bid. So someone could say, oh, yeah, I'll do it for you, but I want $500 a day. I want $2,500 a week. And the Accounts Committee has noticed some very substantial payments to transportation vendors. Very substantial.
So, Mr. Morris, could you just explain kind of how, what we have now, what this ordinance would accomplish, what your role would be in this? And it seems like we're drafting this ordinance to solve a problem. Does this ordinance solve the problem in which we seek to resolve?
I believe currently, as Councilor Falwell stated, that we have a number of service agreements. So we can still possibly have multiple service agreements, but there's also the possibility that we could have one vendor. It all depends on the low bid of each route. So I think this just adds some structure to it and makes it more competitive and puts in set rates so that there can be more oversight and contract management.
So who
services.
currently has the control right now, the superintendent, or if to enter into these service agreements, who's signing those agreements on the city side?
I haven't been involved in it, but I would assume that it's the transportation department.
And so now, if the transportation, now you will be kind of involved in this process in which there will no longer be a service agreement that does not require specific amounts for the route bidded on?
No, there will still be, it might be just semantics, but it won't be called a service agreement. There will be contracts put
Right.
together. My involvement, just as Councilor Fowler said, would be, I would need the information from the school department, such as the scope of services, all the technical details provided. They would put together a draft bid, so nothing would really change except for the fact that I will be conducting the procurement, a competitive procurement.
Now, if they handed you one of these service agreements that is not, that's as they've been operating, let's say this past year, where it doesn't have those specific technical details which you state, this is the route, this is the cost, whether it be one fee or hourly or whatever, but those technical cost details that make it a certain cost instead of an unknown cost. Because right now my understanding is they're unknown costs, but with your involvement, because of 30B and the procurement process, those now become known costs.
Exactly.
And you could not put out an unknown cost agreement?
Under Chapter 30B, no, I wouldn't.
Okay. Because, I think that's the crux of it
How would
right
I
there.
award a contract if there's no cost? It's
Right.
based on the low bidder.
Okay, so that's the structure that the 30B in your office would provide,
provides, yes.
that it would no longer be this unknown cost, just bill us for the services. All those technical details or cost requirements will be clear and understandable and then put out to bid.
Yes, and I can't speak to how it's currently done right now. I have no involvement in it, so I really don't know.
Right, but if you're involved, there's cost certainty.
Yes.
Okay. That's essentially what I need to know. Thank you, Mr. Morris. I appreciate your
You're
time.
welcome.
Councilor?
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got a quick question. Thank you, Ms. Morris, over here. My question, how do we control the bidding, and how do we come up with the price?
The school department, I believe the transportation department would structure or draft the bid docs with a price proposal based on, I would assume, the routes, the number of buses, number of vans, but I don't have any experience in transportation, so I would have to rely on
the school department to put the bid together. I'm going to make sure that all the procurement requirements are in the bid.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Attorney Resnick, did you have a?
No.
Oh, okay. Councilors, if you're interested, I can send you, for example, the town of Brookline. They just bid in March, and they had a very comprehensive packet of 60 pages of documents and requirements and on-time performance, and they did of all of the ones that I read, that was one of the best, and that's kind of what got me started on this ordinance here, because school transportation, special ed transportation is very, very costly. Right now, you can basically charge anything you want.
Also, there's no cost control.
It's just, yeah, there's no required bid, so you could just tell the school department, yeah, I'll do it, but this is what I want. And you either give it to them, or you don't get the child transported.
You don't get the service.
So I hope this, as Mr. Morris said, it'll bring some structure, some cost certainty to it, and I think that's important. So anyway, that's, anyone else?
So can I just add one thing? If this ordinance is pertaining to my position, maybe this is just a housekeeping item, but it says conducted by the city's procurement officer. My title is the city's chief procurement officer.
It should be Chief Procurement Officer.
Yes.
All right.
Motion to amend?
Motion to amend to include that.
And just one other item, I was listening to the meeting earlier, and our earlier agenda, it was mentioned about adding or designee, so I was just asking, does it make sense to add some flexibility to this ordinance, just in case someone leave or not available to add or designee?
Yes. And we can incorporate that, yes.
Motion to amend the ordinance to designate the city's procurement officer as the city's chief procurement officer and add or designate.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? It is a vote unanimously.
Motion to recommend favorably,
As amended.
as amended.
Second.
There's been a motion made and properly seconded to recommend favorably as amended. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? All opposed? It is a vote unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morris, for
You're
waiting
welcome.
around. And
Thank you, Mr.
Have a nice
Morris.
night.
Appreciate it. You as well.
thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
There is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? We are adjourned.
Do it.
All righty.
Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you. It was